Hi, I'm going to go over 3 ways you can use ClioVis to crush your coursework as a student. Before we jump in, I'm going to go over each of the 3 ways. First is going to be using ClioVis to take notes. Second is going to be using ClioVis to break down books into key events, ideas, and concepts. And the third is going to be using ClioVis to study for an exam. All right. So for using ClioVis to take notes, this is a timeline that I use to take notes on my History of Russia since 1917 course. So I put a bunch of different events on the timeline as we moved throughout different lectures and through the chronology of Russian history. But the key part that I really appreciate about ClioVis is it helped me develop an analytical framework just by taking notes that I didn't develop by using a notebook or Google Docs. Okay, so what do I mean by that? What I mean is, when you're tested on history and when you're testing a lot of things in college, they're testing your ways to connect different events and ideas together and not necessarily the rote memorization of them. And so what ClioVis allowed me to do was, connect different events together like the February Revolution and Russia and World War One. So I was able to take notes on Russia and World War One, and then draw a line and write about how Russia's role in World War One may have influenced the February Revolution. Also, using eras, I was able to denote broad brushstrokes in history. So here I did like who's in power, and here was the USSR or the Tsar. Um, and I could also use categories to divide up my events. All right, so this is a pretty chaotic timeline, but it shows how you could use ClioVis to take notes in a new creative way. Um, that really allows you to connect things together that Google Docs or a notebook may not allow you to. All right. Number 2 is using ClioVis to break down key events in a book or concepts. So I read a book for a history class called The History of the Grandparents We Never Had by Ivan Jablonka. And I here put a bunch of key events talked about in there. So, for example, one main theme was Jewish refugees fleeing for France during the rise of the Nazis. And so I wrote notes here and yeah, I was able to take key events and this really helped me learn the information in the book. And this applies far beyond history. So pretend or imagine you're reading a book in a literature course and you want to write down the key events in that book and the broad brushstrokes and themes that you want to talk about in class. You could use ClioVis for that using the eras feature and plotting events on there and putting categories on. So it really applies in a number of different fields. Okay, the final one, the third way that I'm covering on how you can use ClioVis as a student to help you succeed is to study for an exam. So this is just a um, broad timeline on French history. Um, and yeah, so one of the biggest ways that psychologists say the most effective ways to study is by making things, not rote memorization. And that is a superpower of ClioVis because when you're making timelines, you're having to plot out events and put them in context with each other visually and connect them and write descriptions on them. And just the act of making a ClioVis timeline can really help you prepare for a test. And especially when you're categorizing things and, labeling them. So that's the third way you can use ClioVis and I've used it myself, is to create a timeline of events to study for a test. So those were just 3 ways that you could use ClioVis as a student to help you succeed. Um, yeah, if you have any questions about how the software works, please go to the ClioVis website or check out our YouTube channel.